Welcome to today's episode of US Undergraduate Applications, Strategies, Pitfalls, and Tools, a discussion. I'm your host, Ramya Ashok, founder of CollegeBound Experts, a dedicated platform committed to guiding, mentoring, and empowering students to turn their college application dreams into reality. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by a very special guest, Manmohan Thorat. Manmohan is a mechanical engineer and sociologist who earned his bachelor's degree from Oklahoma State University. He spent nearly 5 years at the US India Educational Foundation's Mumbai Center, advising students on their educational journeys to the United States. Since October 2023, Manmohan has been traveling across India, exploring our cultural and educational roots. Now, he works as an independent photographer, financial, and automotive advisor, bringing a unique and diverse perspective to our discussion today. A very warm welcome, Manmohan.
Thank you, Ramya.
You're welcome. So in this episode, we'll dive into the US college admissions process, covering some of the key strategies, common pitfalls to avoid, and the most valuable resources for students, especially international students who are so much there in India. Whether you're just starting your application journey or you're deep in this process, this episode is full of insights and tips to help you succeed. So let's get started. So, as a first question, and as an expert that you are in higher education, especially US higher education, Manmohan, see, we all have come across a lot of do's that are available everywhere. These are the right things to do. These are the worked methods, best practices, so on. So everywhere it's available in the internet. What applicants lack is something that they need to know that this is not the right thing to do, or simply put, the don'ts or common pitfalls that students could avoid during their application process itself. So, basis this context, my first question is this: what are some of the most common mistakes that students make while writing their college essays, and how can they avoid falling into these traps, especially the one of choosing a generic or overused topic in the essays? Over to you, Manmohan.
All right, so I'll begin with helping you understand the background of what you're about to do. So most of you all are going to be Indian students who have grown up in the Indian education system. And now you're about to apply to the American education system. So both of these systems are quite different. I would say the Indian and the British education system is more similar, but the American education system is different. So first you need to understand that there is a difference. So once you understand that there is a difference, then the approach is going to be a little bit different, which is, even in India, it's changing, but predominantly and historically, India's education system has been based on marks, or how well are your capabilities to be able to perform at an examination. Even our education structure is usually a unit test and a final exam. And that is the basis of you getting admission into the next educational institution. Whereas in the US, they take into consideration a lot of other things in addition to your grades. So why the first thing that Ramya spoke about is the essays. Why would someone even speak about essays when you're talking about admissions? The essays are a subjective way of explaining who you are above and beyond your grades. Now, let me give you an example of two students. Let's say student A comes from a family who is a third generation, who's educated at the third generation. The resources and the background that that student might have might be very easy for that person to attain 80%, 90% in their, let's say, 10th standard, 12th standard board exams. Compare that to, let's say, there's another student who is the first person in their family to get educated. So that person getting 60, 70% is just as impressive as this other student. So essays is one of those ways to actually explain your background. Essays is one such way to explain your thought process, and maybe even your personality, because the US admissions process, they take into consideration your background, they take into consideration what your interests are. I'll actually give you an example of interest. Um, most all of us have had to study 5 6 subjects in school, right? But what happens is we actually might have an inclination to 1 or 2 subjects. So what happens is your interest matters a lot, even though you are not the most talented person in that subject. Because you're so interested in that subject over a period of, let's say, 4 years, a bachelor's degree is 4 years. So if you're studying that subject for 4 years, you will become an expert in that subject, regardless of talent. Because talent is on one hand of the spectrum, we have talent, and the other hand is your interest in that subject. So the essay is a way to, not just the main essay, but the other essays are also a way to demonstrate that. So that is one thing to understand. You are walking into a different education system, so you need to treat it like, you need to imagine that you are an American student, because the application officer is going to more or less treat each student individually and kind of on the same spectrum. Because just as you are looking for a great university, the universities are looking for good students. So they're not going to pick favorites as much. They're just going to look at the strength of the student. So portray your strengths, put some thought into how you want your application to look like, and then that would be the right approach. So that is one major pitfall, because all of us on the 11th 12th standard, we have grown up in the education system in India. We assume that the essay is very similar to the essays that we've written in school, which is usually a 800-page paragraph on a very small singular topic. But if you look at the common essay prompts, they're actually quite detailed. They actually make you think a lot. It's going to be something that you're going to take a month, 2 months, 3 months to write with multiple drafts. And that's why um, you might need help. Not maybe, you will need help. You might be the best writer, but even the best writers collaborate. You might see this with a lot of books that you've read. Um, so it'll make a lot of sense for you to get a third person's perspective on the essays, and approach it with that angle, and put a lot of thought. We go into it in the future, in the upcoming questions, but that in general is something to keep in mind when you're approaching the application to the US.